for being with Bloomberg TV today. So we had the Libor scandal last week, Bob Diamond leaving Barclays. Do you think that's a problem with the banking culture? What consequences will it have on the banking culture?
Well, in my view, this latest scandal, like many other episodes that occurred recently, suggests that nothing has happened after the global financial crisis, because the incentives of the banks is still to cheat and do things that are either illegal or immoral, and the only way to avoid that is to break up these financial supermarkets. When you have within the same firm commercial banking, investment banking, asset management, prime brokerages, insurance, underwriting, every security, derivatives, there are no Chinese walls, and there are massive conflicts of interest because you are on both sides of every deal. So that's the fundamental problem. Bankers are greedy. They've been greedy for the last hundreds of years. It's not a question they're more immoral today than they were 1,000 years ago. You have to make sure that they behave in ways in which you minimize those risks. And one way of doing it is just to separate activities so you minimize the conflicts of interest. Otherwise, this thing is going to happen over and over again.
Do you think that some criminal sanctions should happen against Bob Diamond?
Well, they should occur because no one has gone in jail since the global financial crisis for any of these things. The banks do things that are illegal. At best, they slap on them, a fine. If some people will end up in jail, maybe they will teach a lesson to somebody. Yeah, there'll be, or somebody hanging in the streets.
Do you think the banking culture is going to change after this scandal, or do you think that
nothing is going to change? It's just the same as before. You have more conflicts of interest today than 4 years ago. In the US, you had banks that were too big to fail, and now they're even bigger to fail because JP Morgan took over Washington Mutual and Bear Stearns. Bank of America took over Merrill Lynch and Countrywide. So too big to fail banks with conflicts of interest have become even bigger to fail. So things have become worse. They've not become better. Nothing has changed.
We had the very crucial EU summit last week with short-term relief for Spain and measures for Italy, possibly. Do you think that's enough to keep the Eurozone out of the woods for the next 6 months, or are we going to see more of the impact of the debt crisis of Spain and Italy in the coming months?
Well, the summit was a failure because a week after the summit and a week after even the ECB has decided to cut policy rates, the yields on Spanish debt are back above 7%. The stock market after the ECB decision in Spain fell 3%. So nothing has changed. Those were assumed to be successes, both the Leader Summit and the ECB decision, and the reality is markets were expecting much more. Either you have debt mutualization to reduce the spread, or you have debt monetization by the ECB, or the bazooka of the EFSF, ESM has to be doubled, tripled, quadrupled, either directly or indirectly through leverage, or otherwise the spreads on Italy and Spain are going to blow up more and more day after day, and you'll have a worse crisis not 6 months from now. You'll have another bigger crisis in the next 2 weeks.
So what should the ECB do in the very short term, in the next few weeks?
Well, I think that the only institution that has enough firepower to backstop the debts of governments is the European Central Bank. So you need something that is politically incorrect to talk about, that is debt monetization. Outright purchases and sterilize in unlimited amounts of the debt of this government by the European Central Bank, something the ECB doesn't want to do and claims that the institution illegally is not allowed to do.
Is it Angela Merkel? The problem is she blocking too much the move towards debt mutualization?
Well, it's certainly Germany, but there is also resistance to debt mutualization throughout the core. In the Netherlands, in Austria, in Finland. Finland doesn't even want to accept an epsilon amount of debt mutualization. That is the one that would come with the agreement to allow the ESM and the EFSF to buy the debt in the secondary or primary market. Even that small amount of limited indirect debt mutualization, they say they're going to fight against it. So it's not just Angela Merkel, it's not just Germany. The core of the Eurozone doesn't want to take the credit risk involved in any variant of debt mutualization.
You said that 2013 could be a very difficult environment to find shelter. Is there any shelter What are the biggest risks? Where can you find shelter?
Well, you know, I think that by 2013, the ability of policymakers to kick the can down the road is going to run out of steam. And in the Eurozone, the slow motion train wreck could become a faster motion train wreck. The US looks like close to stall speed and another recession, given the latest economic data. The landing of China is becoming harder rather than softer. The other emerging markets are also sharply slowing down in terms of growth. All of the BRICS, China, Russia, India, Brazil, also Mexico, Turkey, and many emerging markets. Partly it's because there is a recession in the Eurozone, in the UK, and now stall speed in the US. Partly it's because they're not doing the reforms that are going to increase productive and potential growth. And finally, there is the time bomb of a potential war between Israel and US and Iran. You know, the negotiation has failed, the sanction will fail. Obama doesn't want a war before the election, but after elections, whether it's Obama elected again or Romney, chances are the US is going to decide to go and attack Iran. Then you'll have a doubling of oil prices overnight. So it's a perfect storm. You could have a collapse of the Eurozone, a US double dip, hard landing of China, hard landing of emerging markets, and a war in the Middle East. Next year could be a global perfect storm.
So you predicted a scenario which is much worse than 2008?
Well, it's much worse because, like 2008, you'll have an economic and financial crisis, but unlike 2008, you're running out of policy bullets. In 2008, you could cut policy rates from 5, 6 down to 0, do QE1, QE2, QE3. You could do fiscal stimulus up to 10% of GDP. You could backstop or ring-fence guarantee, bail out banks and everybody else. Today, more QEs are becoming less and less effective because the problems are of solvency, not of liquidity. Fiscal deficits are already so large that everybody has to cut them. You cannot increase them. And you cannot bail out the banks because, one, there is a political opposition to it. Two, governments are near insolvent. They cannot bail out themselves, let alone bail out the banking system. So the problem is that we're running out of policy bullets. We're running out of policy rabbits to pull out of the policy heads compared to 2008. So if a free fall of markets and the economy does occur, you don't have anymore the safety net of enough policy bullets to try to absorb the shocks, because we've been spending the last 4 years using 95% of those bullets. So we are running out of bullets. Could be worse in 2008.
Last question: on the scale of 1 to 10, where do you rank the Euro breakup by 2013?
I don't think that by 2013 there'll be a Eurozone breakup, even if I do believe that by 2013 you're going to have an exit of Greece from the Eurozone. I would point out that over the next 3 to 5 years, I would say there is at least a 40 to 50% chance of a Eurozone breakup. I also point out, in addition to Greece, some countries in the core may decide to exit. A country like Finland could exit before Greece because they don't want to take all the additional credit risk involved in the fact they're already exposed to the ESM, EFSF, Target 2. And now if there's going to be debt mutualization, a fiscal union, more kind of guarantees of various sorts, they're against it. So a country like Finland could exit. Or in the periphery, a country like Italy could decide that they want to also exit because there are many financial and business interests who want to go back to the lira. Berlusconi and his party, this new movement, 5 Stars of Beppe Grillo, the Northern League. There are lots of people in Italy who don't like the euro, and we're going to make money by going back to the lira. So people are thinking about Greece, could happen in Finland, could happen in Italy. I don't think there'll be a breakup of the Eurozone next year. I think that Greece is going to exit, and in 5 years' time, there's at least a 50% chance that the entire Eurozone breaks up.
Thank you very much.
How do you start your day so you make better investment decisions?
You watch Bloomberg Surveillance to find out what the markets are doing, and you talk to smart people. Bloomberg Surveillance.